The first time I realized something was off about my perfect roommate. It was 2:37 a.m., and I was pretending to be asleep. If you'd asked me a month earlier, I would have told you Chase was the easiest guy in the world to live with. Clean, quiet, paid rent 3 days early, smelled like expensive cologne and laundry detergent. The kind of guy moms love and girlfriends brag about. Yeah. Girlfriends, plural. When Chase moved into the apartment, I honestly thought I'd hit the roommate lottery. He showed up with neatly labeled boxes, shook my hand like we were signing a business deal, and said, "James, right? I think this is gonna work out great." And it did, at least on the surface. We were both 24, both working our first real jobs in the city. I was in marketing for a tech startup. He was in finance, something with investment portfolios and numbers that made my brain hurt. He dressed sharp, kept his hair perfectly styled, and somehow managed to look put together even on grocery runs. Meanwhile, I rotated between hoodies and whatever jeans weren't in the laundry basket. Chase dated women, beautiful women, the kind that wore heels just to come over for takeout. I'd hear them laughing in his room, the low murmur of conversation, the occasional soft music drifting down the hall. And I told myself I didn't care. I've been out since college. My friends know. My coworkers know. I don't exactly wave a pride flag off the balcony. But I'm not hiding either. Chase knew too. Came up casually one night over beers. "So," he'd said, leaning back on the couch, "you seeing anyone?" "Not currently," I replied. "Guys in this city either want marriage tomorrow or can't commit to a dinner reservation." He'd laughed at that. Fair. No weirdness. No awkward pause. Just a nod. Like it didn't matter. That's why what started happening at night made absolutely no sense. It began small. I'm a light sleeper. Always have been. The walls in our apartment weren't exactly soundproof, so I'd usually wake up when Chase came home late. I could tell a lot just from the way he moved. If he'd had a good night, he'd hum under his breath. If work stressed him out, he'd drop his keys a little harder than necessary. One night, I woke up to the sound of his bedroom door clicking shut. No humming, no laughter, just quiet. Then, footsteps. Not toward the kitchen, not toward the bathroom, toward my door. I remember staring at the ceiling, my room dark except for the faint orange glow of streetlights leaking through the blinds. My heart started beating faster, though I had no idea why. Maybe he needed something. Maybe there was a leak. Maybe I'd left the stove on. The handle turned slowly, and my door opened. I froze. Keep my door unlocked. We've always had that kind of roommate trust. But hearing it open in the middle of the night? Different story. Through my half-lidded eyes, I saw his silhouette in the doorway. Tall, broad shoulders, just standing there, watching. At least that's what it felt like. He didn't say anything, didn't move at first, just stood there long enough that I started wondering if I was dreaming. Then he stepped inside. Soft, careful, like he didn't want to wake me. My body was screaming at me to sit up and say, "Dude, what are you doing?" But something held me still. Curiosity, maybe, or fear of making it weird if this was somehow innocent. He walked closer to my bed, and then he sat down, right on the edge of my mattress. I could feel the shift in weight instantly. My brain was racing. Is he drunk? Sleepwalking? Is this some kind of prank? His hand hovered near my leg. The air felt heavier somehow. I focused on keeping my breathing slow and even terrified that if he realized I was awake, something would snap. Seconds stretched. Then I felt it. His fingers rested lightly on top of my blanket. I didn't flinch. I didn't push his hand away. I just lay there, heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. After what felt like forever but was probably less than a minute, he inhaled sharply, like he'd just realized what he was doing. His hand lifted. The mattress grew lighter as he stood up. He paused for a second, still facing away from me. Then he walked out, closing my door carefully behind him. I stayed awake the rest of the night, staring at the ceiling, replaying it over and over. By morning, I'd convinced myself I imagined it. Half-asleep hallucination, stress dream, wishful thinking. Except the next night, it happened again. The second night, I didn't pretend to be asleep. I told myself I'd imagined the first time. That my brain had filled in gaps because yeah, Chase was attractive and yeah, I was human. But that didn't mean anything actually happened. So when I heard his door open again around 2 in the morning, I sat up slightly in bed. I waited. Footsteps. Slow. Familiar. My door opened the same careful way as before. This time I turned my head. He didn't look surprised to see my eyes open. In fact, he looked relieved. "Hey," he whispered. My heart was in my throat. "Hey," I replied, just as quietly. There it was. The moment where one of us should have said something logical. Like wrong room or everything okay. Neither of us did. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. "I didn't mean to freak you out," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "Last night. So it had happened." I swallowed. "You kinda did." "Yeah," he admitted, exhaling. "I figured." Silence stretched between us. Thick, uncomfortable, charged. "Why were you in my room, Chase?" He didn't answer right away. His eyes dropped to the floor, then back to me. "I don't really know how to say this without sounding insane," he said. "But I haven't been sleeping much." That doesn't explain the hand on my leg. A ghost of a smile flickered across his face. Not amused, nervous. "No, it doesn't." He took a step closer to my bed, then stopped, like he was giving me space to tell him to leave. "I keep telling myself it's nothing," he said quietly. "Just stress, curiosity, whatever. But then I wake up and I'm standing outside your door." My pulse hammered. "That's not comforting." "I know," he nodded. "That's why I wanted to talk, like an adult. Before I do something stupider. I should have told him to get out. I should have set a boundary, laid down rules, been the mature one. Instead, I asked, 'Do you remember what you did last night?' 'Yes,' he said instantly. 'And tonight?' He hesitated. 'I was going to knock,' he said. 'I swear. But when I saw you were awake.' He trailed off. I shifted on the bed, sitting up fully now. The room felt smaller with him in it. "Chase," I said carefully, "you've been very clear about liking women." "I do," he said quickly. I thought I did. I still do. I think." That word think hung in the air. "But you're here," I said. He nodded once. "Yeah." Another pause. Then, barely above a whisper, he said, "I don't act like this during the day." "No," I agreed. "You don't. At night, it's different," he said. "Everything's quieter. No expectations. No labels. I don't have to be whatever everyone thinks I am." I watched his hands curl into fists at his sides. "I don't come in here because I want to scare you," he continued. "I come in here because this is the only place I don't feel like I'm lying." That hit harder than I expected. "Then why leave?" I asked. His eyes met mine. Dark. Searching. "Because I'm terrified of what it means if I stay." The silence between us wasn't empty anymore. It was full of everything neither of us was saying. Finally, he stepped back. "I won't come in again," he said, "unless you ask." He turned toward the door, and that's when I realized something that made my chest tighten. I didn't want him to leave. "Chase," I said. He stopped. "If this keeps happening," I added slowly, "we probably shouldn't pretend it's nothing." He looked at me over his shoulder. "Yeah," he said. "I was afraid you'd say that." He opened the door, then paused again. "James?" "Yeah." His voice was quieter now. Honest. Vulnerable in a way I'd never heard from him before. "I don't know who I am at night." The door closed behind him. I lay back against my pillow, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. Because the worst part? I was starting to wonder who he really was, and whether I was ready to find out. The days after that were weird, not explosive, not dramatic, just quietly unbearable. During the day, Chase went right back to being the same guy he'd always been. Button-down shirts, coffee in a travel mug, calm, controlled, polite. He talked about work, complained about traffic, asked if I wanted Thai or burgers for dinner like nothing had shifted between us. But everything had shifted. Every time our eyes met, there was an extra beat. Every time our hands brushed passing a plate or a phone charger, it felt deliberate even when it probably wasn't. And at night, nothing happened. No footsteps, no door opening, no shadow in my doorway. I told myself that was a good thing, that this was what handling it like adults looked like. Still, I slept worse than ever. On the fourth night, I gave up around midnight and went to the kitchen for water. The apartment was quiet, lit only by the glow from the fridge and the city lights outside. Chase was already there, leaning against the counter. We startled each other. "Jesus," he muttered. "You scared me." "Same," I said, gripping my glass like a shield. An awkward silence followed. Not hostile, just loaded. "You okay?" he asked. I shrugged. "Could ask you the same." He huffed a quiet laugh. "Fair." He didn't move away. Neither did I. "About the other night," he said, staring at the floor. "I meant what I said. I won't cross lines." "I know," I replied. Then, after a pause, "But pretending nothing's happening is also kind of a line." He looked up at me then. Really looked. "Is that what you think?" he asked. "I think," I said carefully, "that whatever's going on with you doesn't just switch off when the sun comes up." His jaw tightened. "You don't get it." "Then explain it to me." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing once before stopping in front of me. "I've built my whole life around being a certain version of myself," he said. "Straight, in control, predictable. And that version works. It gets me dates, jobs, approval. And at night," I asked. "At night," he said quietly, "I don't have to perform." The word hung there between us. "You're not a performance," I said. His eyes flicked to mine. Something softened. "I don't know what you want from me," he admitted. "I'm not asking you to label anything," I said. "I just need honesty." He exhaled slowly. "Okay." Then, even slower, "I think about you more than I should." My chest tightened. "And I don't know what that makes me." I swallowed. "It makes you human." He laughed quietly at that. "You always make it sound so simple." "It's not," I said. "But it doesn't have to be terrifying either." For a moment, I thought he might reach out. Instead, he stepped back. "I need time," he said, "to figure out who I am when I'm not hiding in the dark." I nodded, even though part of me didn't want to let him go. "That's fair." He hesitated, then added, "Thank you for not freaking out or kicking me out." I gave a small smile. "You're welcome." As he walked back to his room, I realized something unsettling and exciting at the same time. Chase wasn't some perfect straight roommate with a secret. He was a guy standing on the edge of something he'd spent his whole life avoiding. And whether I liked it or not, I was standing right there with him. Time didn't give Chase clarity. It gave him distance. A week passed, then another. He stopped bringing girls home altogether. No heels by the door. No laughter through the walls. His room stayed dark at night, quiet in a way that felt intentional. We still talked, still ate dinner together, still joked about work and shared the couch like nothing was wrong. But there was something unsaid humming under every interaction. One Friday night, it finally snapped. We'd both had rough weeks. I came home late, kicked off my shoes, and found Chase on the balcony with a beer, staring out at the city like it had personally offended him. "Mind if I join?" I asked. He shook his head. "Please." We stood there side by side, the cold air biting just enough to keep us awake. "I went on a date," he said suddenly. My chest tightened before I could stop it. "How was it?" He scoffed softly. "Textbook. She was great, smart, funny, and I kept thinking about you." Silence crashed between us. "I tried to do everything right," he continued. "I paid. I laughed. I leaned in at the right moments. And all I could think was how fake it felt." I turned to him. "Chase, I kissed her goodnight," he cut in, "and felt nothing. That hurt more than I expected. Not because he kissed someone else, but because I could hear how shaken he was." "I don't only think about you at night anymore," he said quietly. "That's what scares me." The city buzzed below us, indifferent. I can't be your experiment, I said finally. Or your secret. He nodded immediately. I know. And I don't want you to be. Then what do you want? He turned to face me fully now. His voice dropped. I want to stop lying to myself. The honesty in that nearly undid me. I don't know what label fits, he went on. I don't know what this means long term, but I know I don't want to keep pretending this isn't real. My heart pounded. So what happens now? I want to try being awake for this, he said. Not hiding in the dark. Not sneaking into your room like I'm ashamed. I searched his face. And if you wake up one day and realize this isn't who you are, then I deal with that, he said. But I won't erase what I felt getting there. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then I nodded. Okay. Later that night, lying in bed, I realized something had finally changed. Chase didn't come into my room. He didn't have to, because for the first time since moving in together, whatever was growing between us wasn't trapped in the dark anymore. It was coffee. Saturday morning, sunlight spilling through the kitchen windows, Chase standing there in sweatpants and an old college hoodie, rubbing sleep from his eyes like any other day. Except this time, when he saw me, he smiled. Not the polite roommate smile. Something softer, unguarded. Morning, he said. Morning. He poured 2 mugs without asking and slid one across the counter to me. That small, stupid gesture hit harder than I expected. The silence wasn't awkward anymore, it was anticipatory. Like we were both waiting to see who would flinch first. I told my sister, he said suddenly. I looked up. About? About not being sure anymore, he clarified. Not about you. Just me. And, he shrugged. She said, congrats on finally paying attention to yourself. Then asked if I was safe. I smiled despite myself. Sounds like a good sister. She is. He hesitated. I've never told anyone something before it was neat and finished. Yeah, I said softly. Welcome to the messy part. He laughed under his breath, then sobered. I'm not asking for guarantees, he said, or labels. I just don't want to keep circling each other like this. My heart thudded. So what are you asking? He met my eyes, held them. A date, he said. A real one. Outside. In daylight. Something warm unfurled in my chest. Okay, I said. One condition. Name it. No disappearing afterward, I said. If it's confusing, we talk. If it's too much, we talk. No pretending it didn't matter. He nodded immediately. Deal. Our first date was simple, almost painfully normal. Dinner at a small place down the street. A walk afterward. No hands held. The way he looked at me like he was seeing something he'd been afraid to look at before that was new. When we got home, we lingered by the door. This was nice, he said. It was, I agreed. He hesitated, then leaned in and pressed a brief, careful kiss to my cheek. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't rushed. It was intentional. That night, lying in my bed, I realized something important. The Chase who used to sneak into my room in the dark wasn't gone. He'd just stopped hiding. And whatever this was becoming slow, uncertain, very real, it wasn't about what he did at night anymore. It was about what he was brave enough to do when the lights were on. And for the first time since this all began, I felt hopeful. Hope turned out to be the most dangerous part. Not because it hurt, but because it made everything matter. After that first date, we fell into something that didn't have a name, but definitely had weight. Morning coffee together. Longer conversations on the couch. Movie nights where neither of us pretended the armrest was a hard boundary anymore. Still no rushing. Chase was careful, almost overly so. Sometimes I caught him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking. One night, a few weeks later, he came home later than usual. Not drunk, not stressed, just quiet in a thoughtful way that set off alarms in my chest. You okay? I asked. He nodded, then shook his head. Can we talk? That sentence always does something to a person. We sat on opposite ends of the couch at first. Old habits. I told a guy at work I went on a date, he said. I waited. He assumed it was with a woman, Chase continued, and I didn't correct him. My stomach dropped, but I stayed quiet. I didn't lie, he added quickly. I just didn't expand. And how did that feel? I asked. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Like I was split in half. He turned to me. I don't want you only in the parts of my life that feel safe. That was new. I'm not asking you to come out for me, I said carefully. That's your timeline. I know, he said. But I need to know if I do this slowly. Will you still be here? The vulnerability in his voice was raw, unpolished. Nothing like the guy who'd moved in with color-coded boxes. I scooted closer. I'm not going anywhere because it's easy, I said. I'm here because it's honest. He let out a breath he'd clearly been holding. That night, when things finally shifted between us, it wasn't sudden. We were sitting close, talking, laughing softly, then quiet. Chase looked at me, really looked, and said, I'm not scared right now. I didn't answer with words. This is real, he said. Yes, I replied. I realized something that made me smile into the quiet. The man who used to only show up in my room at night, he was finally letting himself stay. And whatever came next, labels, fear, daylight, it wouldn't erase this. Because the truth was no longer a secret. And neither were we. Being seen changes things. Not all at once. Not cleanly. But once it starts, there's no way to undo it. Chase didn't come out to the world overnight. What he did instead was quieter and somehow braver. He started correcting small assumptions. Not announcing anything. Just not lying anymore. When coworkers asked about his weekend, he'd say, I went out with someone, and let the sentence sit there. When friends teased him about dating apps, he shrugged and said he wasn't in a rush. And when they pushed, he changed the subject. That might sound small, but I watched how hard it was for him. How every choice cost him something. Comfort. Familiarity. The easy mask he'd worn for years. One night, after a dinner with his old college friends, he came home tense. Jacket still on. Shoes kicked off too hard. Rough? I asked. He nodded. They were joking about this guy they know who suddenly decided he was into men. My jaw tightened. What did you do? Nothing, he admitted. I froze. I waited. Then later, he said quietly, one of them asked if I was seeing anyone. And I said yes. My heart jumped. Did you say who? He shook his head. But I didn't dodge it either. I just said, someone important. I stepped closer. How'd that feel? He thought for a second, then smiled, small but real. Like I didn't disappear. That was when it hit me. Chase wasn't discovering something new about himself. He was allowing something old to exist. A few weeks later, he asked if I wanted to meet his sister. Low stakes, he promised. Coffee. She already knows I'm figuring things out. I said yes before my nerves could catch up. She hugged me the moment she met me. So you're James, she said, grinning. Finally. Chase groaned. Don't make it weird. You made it weird for years, she shot back. Watching him with her relaxed, honest, unguarded eye, understood something I hadn't before. The man who used to come into my room at night wasn't ashamed of me. He'd been afraid of losing himself. Later that night, back home, Chase leaned against the counter and looked at me like he was memorizing my face again. You know, he said, I used to think the night version of me was the real one. And now? I asked. Now I think he was just the part of me that didn't know how to speak yet. He reached for my hand. Fully. No hesitation. I squeezed back. Because whatever this was, it wasn't perfect. But it was honest. And for both of us, that changed everything. If you told me a year ago that my perfect straight roommate would end up holding my hand in broad daylight, I would have laughed. Not because I didn't want it. Because I didn't think it was possible. The last real turning point didn't happen in our apartment. It didn't happen at night. And it wasn't dramatic. It happened at a rooftop party. One of Chase's coworkers was leaving the company, and there was a small goodbye thing downtown. He asked if I wanted to come. You don't have to, he said. It might be a lot. Do you want me there? I asked. He didn't hesitate. Yeah. So I went. It wasn't huge, maybe 30 people. Music playing low. String lights overhead. Everyone dressed a little too nice for a Thursday. I could feel Chase's nerves from the second we walked in. His hand brushed mine once, then pulled back. Not rejecting, just calculating. People came up to him immediately. Handshakes, back slaps. Chase, man. Energy I'd seen before. He introduced me twice as my roommate, James. That word stung a little, but I understood. This was new territory. Then it happened. One of the guys from his team, tall, loud, slightly buzzed, grinned and said, "So James, you must hear all about Chase's dating life. Guy goes through women like quarterly reports." The group laughed. I didn't look at Chase. I didn't need to. I could feel him freeze beside me. This was the moment. The old version of him would have laughed, played along, kept it easy. Instead, he said calmly, "Not exactly." The laughter faded. The guy smirked. "Oh yeah?" Settling down, Chase exhaled once. "Steady. I'm seeing someone," he said. There was a beat of silence. "Nice," the guy said. "Who's the lucky girl?" And this was the part I'll never forget. Chase looked at me, not quickly, not accidentally, deliberately, then back at his coworker. "He's right here." The air shifted. Not dramatically, not explosively, just enough. A couple of raised eyebrows. One awkward sip of a drink. One guy who clearly didn't know where to look. But no one laughed. No one made a joke. The loud coworker blinked, then nodded slowly. "Oh, cool, man." And that was it. Conversation moved on. Music kept playing. The city lights blinked behind us like nothing monumental had just happened. But something had. Chase didn't let go of my hand after that. Not once. On the way home, walking through cool night air, I finally asked, "You okay?" He let out a shaky breath and laughed softly. I thought I was going to throw up. I squeezed his fingers. "You didn't." "No," he said. Then he looked at me the way he used to look at my doorway at 2 a.m. only this time. There was no fear in it. "I don't feel split in half anymore," he admitted. That hit me harder than anything else he'd said over the past year. Back at the apartment, we stood in the living room for a moment, quiet. "You know," I said, "for a while I thought you were two different people. Day Chase and Night Chase." He smiled faintly. "Yeah, me too." "But you're not," I continued. "You're just you. It just took you a while to stop hiding from yourself." He stepped closer. "I used to think the version of me who walked into your room in the dark was the only honest one," he said. "But I was wrong." Yeah, he said, brushing his thumb gently across my knuckles. "The honest version is the one who stays." And he did. No more shadows in doorways. No more pretending in daylight. Just Chase imperfect, learning, stubborn, brave. My ideal roommate turned out not to be the guy who paid rent early and dated the right women. He turned out to be the man who was terrified of losing everything and chose honesty anyway. And if I'm being real, the night he first stood in my doorway at 2:37 a.m., I thought my world was about to fall apart. I had no idea it was actually about to begin.